So good afternoon, everyone, and a warm welcome to this DSSGx summer programme DataFest on behalf of the University of Warwick and our partner university, the Ludwig Maximilians University in Munich. Data science has changed the world, the way we access information, the way we solve problems, and the way we do business. It has created value for many businesses, but not all benefit from data science equally. Because not all organizations have the required resources, means, or expertise. And this is where DSSGx summer programme can help. The University of Warwick is one of the UK's leading research universities and a founding member of the Alan Turing Institute. It should come as no surprise then that data science is one of Warwick's strengths. At the university, we approach data science from an interdisciplinary perspective, including statistics, mathematics, computer sciences, and the business school, who are all joining forces in running this data science for the social good programme. The University of Warwick offers degrees in data science and in data analytics. And as a Dean of Warwick Business School, I'm proud to say that we're one of the first business schools worldwide who understood the importance of data science and data analytics and created an MSc in business analytics, a course that is now copied by many other universities. As a university, we're also delighted to host the DSSGx Summer School, as it fits with Warwick's expertise, ambitions and visions in so many ways. It matches our ambition for excellence in teaching, as it provides a unique learning experience, bringing together some of the world's best aspiring data scientists to work in teams on projects that really matter. Using that case-based training method, the programme ensures that all participants get to experience the practical real-world steps of real-world data science projects in a practical and not just theoretical manner. It also matches our ambition for excellence in impact, as it delivers usable solutions to project partners and makes them available in open source so that others can benefit as well. And last but not least, it aligns with the university's vision around helping to transform our region, country, and the world for the collective good. This afternoon, I'm looking forward to hearing from the participants today and what they've achieved this year, and would like to thank all participants and the organising team for their hard work and in doing so, making a positive impact on the world. I wish all of you an interesting afternoon. I will now hand over to Professor Jürgen Branke, Director of the Data Science for Social Good Programme at Warwick, to tell us a little bit more about this year's programme. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Andy. So hello and welcome from my side as well. It is great to see that so many of you have joined today to witness what has been achieved in this year's Data Science for Social Good programme. Let me give you a little bit of background information. The program has been created in 2013 at the University of Chicago by Raid Ghani. It is a very intense 12-week summer program that takes some of the world's best students and brings them together with charities and government organizations to tackle data science problems with a social impact. There are many fantastic aspects of this program. For the fellows, it provides a unique case-based training. They have been outstanding when they joined. They are amazing when they leave. For our partners, it delivers usable industry quality and open source data products. And for the world, it uses the power of data science to make it at least a little bit a better place. It also creates a community of like-minded people and organizations who care about our society and who are willing and able to use their skills in an ethical way. In 2019, the program has been brought to the UK by the University of Warwick and the Alan Turing Institute, the UK's National Institute for Data Science and Artificial Intelligence. In 2020, as we all know, COVID hit us, but we didn't want to cancel the program and instead moved it completely online. And also this year, for the same reason, everything has been online. And although we would prefer to meet face-to-face, the online setup has made it very easy to work on projects worldwide and to collaborate with the Ludwig Maximilians University in Munich and the Munich Center for Machine Learning. Today is the highlight and the closing session of this year's program, our DataFest, where the fellows will showcase what they have achieved over the summer. However, what you see today is really just the tip of an iceberg. What you can't see immediately is a year-round effort that is needed to keep this program running. It all starts with advertising, making potential fellows and partners aware of the program so that they apply to work with us. Then, of course, there is fundraising. Given the benefits, this program is, I think, great value for money, but still, we need to secure the money required to run it. A lot of effort goes into talking to potential project partners. Many of them are charities with little experience in data science, and we help them to define and scope a project suitable for DSSG. Then there's the selection of fellows. We want the world's top students, and so we go through a thorough selection process with 2 rounds of interviews, focusing on the technical as well as the social skills. If I tell you that this year we had over 470 applications for 16 places, you can imagine the amount of work that goes into the selection process. We emphasize in DSSG not only academic excellence, but also industry skills and industry-level product quality. And so we recruit project managers and technical mentors from industry. Only when all this has been accomplished, we have the 12-week intensive summer program that culminates in today's DataFest. So you can see there's a huge amount of work, and we couldn't do this without the help and dedication of many, many people who volunteer their time and expertise. So I would like to thank at least some of them. For example, so I'd like to thank the LMU team, so Bernd Bischel, Susanne Dandl, Juliane Laux, and Florian Pfisterer, and also Frauke Kreuter and Christoph Kern. And the Warwick team, Colm Connaughton, Maria Bazzi, Sebastian Vollmer, Claire Roberts, and Dominik Seminski. But as I said, there are many, many more people involved at LMU and Warwick, but also at other organizations that support this program and previous fellows that help in later years. So a big thank you to all those who helped make this happen. Special thanks, of course, go to our project managers and technical mentors who worked with the fellows on a daily basis, supporting them throughout this journey. So that's Doshmun, Daniel, Amit, Robert, and Yuri. Thank you very much for all the hard work that you put into this. And last but not least, I mentioned the funds needed to run such a program. And it wouldn't be possible without the generous support of the Alan Turing Institute, LV, Microsoft, Aridia, DataQuest, and of course, our partner universities, the University of Warwick and the Ludwig Maximilians University with the Munich Center for Machine Learning. Thanks to all those organizations to make this possible. Now we move over to our keynote, and I hand over to Sebastian Vollmer, who will introduce our keynote speaker.
Thank you, Jürgen. Just maybe a few words about myself. So my name is Sebastian Vollmer. I'm a professor of applied machine learning at the University of Kaiserslautern and the German Center for Artificial Intelligence. Up until recently, associate professor in Warwick. I had brought this initiative from the US to the UK and led it for 2 years. This year, we jointly organized it between Warwick and Munich. And we are very, very honored to have such a great speaker. So let me come to the introduction. So it's my honor to introduce Ben Goldacre. Ben is a doctor, a best-selling author, an academic, and campaigner. His work focuses on the use and misuse of science and statistics by journalists, politicians, drug companies. His book, Bad Science, reached the #1 in the UK nonfiction chart and has sold over 1 million copies worldwide. He has published in all major newspapers, various academic journals. He has written government papers and reports on evidence-based policy, founded a successful global campaign for research transparency, and currently, among others, works as a professor at the University of Oxford. Oxford is also the place where Ben and I both seem to have spent most of the boring weekends during lockdown with our children, because they were cycling around the math department. And it's nice to see you again, Ben. And without further ado, I hand over to Ben.
Oh, hey, thanks. Wait, am I unmuted? I am. Victory. Tell me, Sebastian, not to be inattentive, but how long do you want me to talk for? 10, 20, 30, 15?
20 minutes and then some Q&A.
All right, great. So hey, look, thanks for having me. And it's a great project that you're all embarked on, or a bazillion micro projects within the overarching mission. I'd like to talk a little bit about something that we built during the COVID-19 pandemic. Look, I can promise you I'm going to shut up. One of the bad things about talking from your bedroom, I mean, I don't actually live like a teenager with a single bed, but you know what I mean, your spare bedroom, is that you can't, you don't get the social cues of, can you shut up now, please? So I've bought this big red timer that I stick on top of my monitor. I'd like to talk about the Open Safely project, which is a platform that we built from scratch during the COVID-19 pandemic. From first inception, from the first idea to our first end-to-end analysis being up with about 6 weeks. And Open Safely is the largest electronic health records research platform, I think, that has ever been created anywhere in the world. We now are running code across 58 million patients' full electronic health records. That's their entire primary care record, every prescription, diagnosis, every referral letter, every blood test result, every imaging request, and so on, linked on to a myriad of other data, including SUS, the secondary care data, so what happens to you in hospital, coded A&E attendances, fast-flowing death in hospital from COVID data, SGSS COVID testing data, vaccine testing, ONS cause of death in and out of hospital, lots of household data. So for every individual, we know we've got linked on all of the data about any of the other occupants in their household, again, pseudonymized. We know, is it a care home? We know its approximate location and so on. And that's what allows us to do research into spread and the way that your risk is modified by who you live in a house with, for example. We've got ITU data, and we're now ingesting various other bespoke research cohorts, including ISARIC, ICNARC, and also some randomized trial data for follow-up. Now, this is an unprecedented volume of data. And yet, in an era when there's been an enormous amount of controversy around, in particular, the plans for the new GP data extract into NHS Digital, we've managed to do it with very, very strong support from privacy campaigners, from professionals, and from patient groups. And that's really because we sat down and looked at all of the concerns that those groups raise and worked out a combination of technical solutions and service wrapper that would address those concerns. Now, the thing that would be most exciting to you lot, because you're all, like me, open code mavens, is that this entire project from start to finish is fully open source. All of the code for the platform is fully open source. And if you go to github.com/opensafely, you'll find it all. All of the code for every analysis that runs, all the data management code, all the data analysis code is also all open. And it's not open because we have a code of conduct and we ask people to make it open. It is open by automatic operation of the platform. You cannot write code on Open Safely, or rather you cannot execute code on Open Safely by any means other than it passing through a GitHub repository. Now, I'm going to talk in eye-watering detail about how the whole framework works, on the understanding that this is a geeky crowd and you don't get to talk to a geeky crowd every day, so I'm going to exploit that. I should also say, though, that we're hiring, and our team email address is at the bottom of every slide that I will show you. It's team@opensafely.org, And if anybody wants to come and work with us, then send us an email and come and see us and say hi. Let me see, if I press a button, do you think something miraculous like screen sharing will happen? How's that? Is that working? Yeah. All right, good. I mean, it's just horrible sharing a screen. These machines are so leaky, aren't they? I've seen people broadcast to hundreds of people their entire email inbox by accidentally flipping to Chrome. Okay, so COVID-19, massive sudden appearance of a new cause of death. What do you do? Because with the current approaches to accessing patient data, you've got a number of problems. Number one is they don't flow very quickly, because they all rely on a paradigm of intermittent extraction of data. And you need fast flowing data, because if you relied on the occasional data extractions you see for services like CPRD or other research database extracts, the whole of wave one would have come and gone before a single person's records appeared in that data set. So you have to have data flows that are very fast, but you also have to have data sets that are very large, for one very chilling reason, which is that if you want, for example, as in this paper, our Nature paper from July 2020, if you want to understand the different risks of hospitalization, infection and death from COVID in different fine-grained clinical subgroups of the population or fine-grained ethnicity subgroups of the population, it's extraordinary that I have a telephone pestering me with a video of somebody at the door. I don't recommend fitting a video doorbell. It feels really creepy and intrusive. If you want to compare the death rates of in different fine-grained subgroups of the population, then in very crude terms, you need to have enough deaths in each of those groups, or enough expected deaths in each of those fine-grained subgroups to be able to detect a difference. So if you want to know whether people who are taking hydroxychloroquine for their rheumatoid arthritis are less likely to die of COVID because it's preventative, then you need to have enough people on hydroxychloroquine in your study sample to be able to detect a difference. If you want to be able to understand the differences between white Irish people, white other and white British, or Bangladeshi and Indian within the overarching category of South Asian, then you need enough deaths and enough expected deaths in each of those fine-grained subgroups. So that's why you need fast flowing and very large data. And that's what we did in Open Safely. Sorry. So just to give you a bit of an overview of the kind of stuff we've built out of it, this is factors associated with death from COVID-19. On the right, you can see a forest plot of from the fully adjusted model. As soon as we posted it on Twitter for the preprint in May, people were rebranding it with Star Wars backdrop, saying that this was like a terrifying fleet of TIE fighters coming to get you. And I think that's more poetically true than it first feels, actually. This is a chilling description, especially if you look at the impact of deprivation, for example, where there's a very strong, very pronounced social gradient. Ethnicity. Before this paper was done, a lot of people thought that the excess risk of death that you were seeing amongst hospital admissions in South Asian and Black people was attributable perhaps to higher rates of obesity or diabetes or hypertension or other problems that were pre-existing and more common in South Asian and Black groups. But actually, even when you adjust for those, there is a persistent higher effect. We've since been able to show in our paper in the Lancet here that the risks among different ethnic groups have changed between wave one and wave two. So for example, the risk among Black people attenuated, amongst South Asian people, it grew. As I said, we've been able to look at the role of other household occupants. We were able to show that really there was very little additional marginal risk from having a school-aged child in your house. People had somewhat expected that. Well, pleasingly, there were two competing hypotheses. One group said it'll increase your risk because they're bringing COVID home. Anybody who's got young children knows that children bring diseases home. But equally, there was a group of people saying they will protect you because you will have been exposed to so many coronaviruses over the preceding years from sharing a house with a primary school age child that your immune system will have had a lot of practice at epitopes and bits and pieces of the coronavirus that overlap with COVID-19. We've also been able to do stuff much closer to service analytics, and I've always been disappointed by the dividing line that is created, I think, arbitrarily and unhelpfully between pure research, pure academic research, and practical data science to improve the quality, safety, and cost effectiveness of clinical care. Because we've got the whole population, we can do live, near real-time monitoring of all kinds of different stuff. So we can look at COVID vaccination amongst different groups. And so we were the first to identify the different uptake in different ethnic groups in the population for COVID-19 vaccine. We were also the first to identify that there was substantially lower uptake among people with learning disabilities and among people with a diagnosis of a severe mental illness, schizophrenia and bipolar affective disorder. And I'm pleased to say that some of those concerning signals have begun to improve over time. We can also do the same thing for service activity. So we were able to show, for example, how primary care, how GP practices have responded to the COVID-19 pandemic. And actually we were able to show that it was quite a reassuring picture. There was a lot of people stopping doing things which could safely be deferred, but continuing to do things which cannot safely be deferred. And we were able to find some gaps in that and some gaps in that which have been acted on and turned into NHS England safety alerts. We've also been able to look at things like the extent to which people are using diagnostic codes for long COVID, and showed in a paper that had a lot of coverage in July this year that actually doctors were basically not using it at all. So about 0.something% of the population have ever had a SNOMED code entered into their record for long COVID, whereas some of the survey questionnaire data suggests that 1 or even 2 million people have ongoing symptoms of COVID. So that's the product, but for me, what's interesting really is the methods. And when I say methods, I say that very seriously. Historically, I think one of the philosophical and strategic shortcomings in the way that people have approached trusted research environments is that they think of them as a service or a platform, a black box, a commodity, a thing that you spend money on, you procure it, somebody goes off and builds it, and then customers come to it and use it. Now, a trusted research environment, a data science platform, does need to exhibit some of those properties and behaviors, but it also requires methodological innovation. You have to come up with new, clever ways of working with data. In particularly, this is true of electronic health record data. Primary care data is 50 billion rows long. It is incredibly hard to work with. Most researchers and NHS service analysts have never really got up close to it. And about 80% of the work in any data science project using this data is data management. And data management is historically something which has been rather derogated in status. I'd say it's also one of the things that sets apart, insofar as it's possible to do such a thing, data science from stats or epidemiology. To me, a data scientist is somebody who, to an extent, combines stats, domain knowledge, but also a degree of general purpose software developer skills. They know how to write code and how to get it working properly. But also, to me, a data scientist is somebody who knows how to troubleshoot data management to a far greater extent than a typical statistician or researcher. Now, we wanted to address a number of objectives in building open safely. First of all, we wanted to get access, obviously, to this huge volume of data. But to do that, we had to offer much better privacy engineering than had ever been offered before. And that's because even when you take name and address off this data, it remains nonetheless re-identifiable. And historically, people have relied far too much on removing names and addresses as a privacy preserving strategy. If you take the names and addresses of people's primary care records, I can still identify my wife in a pseudonymized data set in a single SQL query. I just looked for somebody who had twins in 2013, a single baby in 2014, is in her rough age range, and where the event codes move from the London area to the Oxford area in about 2015. That is more than enough information to uniquely identify my wife's pseudonym in the electronic health records. And having identified her pseudonymous identifier, you could then go on to read everything else that's in my wife's electronic health records. The same is true of Tony Blair. We know that he had his abnormal heart rhythm reset on 2 occasions when he was Prime Minister. It was in the news. We know that that was done in London. That on its own, combined with his approximate age, is enough to identify the pseudonym for Tony Blair in the electronic health records. And you don't need to know my wife to know the information that I just told you about my wife. That's the sort of information that people at the school gate have. So pseudonymizing data is not enough to protect privacy. Historically, we've relied on it because only a very small number of people have had access to this data. But what we want is a world in which many people have access to this kind of detailed, granular data that is both disclosive, but also very positively powerful. Because we want many hands, many eyes. We want as many people as possible to be able to innovate in that data. So we knew that to get access to 58 million people's records, we had to make a better privacy offer that had been done before. Secondly, we wanted to embody and indeed impose, because this is a platform for other people to use as well as us, we wanted to impose modern, open, collaborative, computational data science working practices. So that means all code and all code lists openly shared by default, not by choice, but by default. We wanted the code to be shared in ways that facilitate review and reuse. So not just a dump of some SQL scripts over there, some arbitrary Python, half the data management is done in R or Stata, but in ways that you can't really understand unless you wrote it. We wanted to try as far as possible to have pragmatic but flexible standards on data management. And we wanted this to be true of everything in the whole project pipeline. So the platform, but also acts of data management analysis for each individual research output. We wanted also to be transparent with the public and with professionals about all actions on the data, because I think that's a really important part of building trust. We wanted modular code, but also portable code, because we wanted it to be scalable. We needed to have a low startup cost because of strategic shortcomings in the UK funding landscape. UK PLC has historically punched above its weight in research because of our open competitive funding system, but TREs and data science infrastructure is a unique example really where that is not the case. There is no open competitive funding for platforms and for methodological innovation in data management and secure analysis of data. And so let me show you very quickly what we built. So we took 3 major design choices that allowed us to be successful and deliver. We're delivering about 1 output every fortnight at the moment. Number 1 is take the analytics to the data. So it's a TRE, not a data dissemination project. And we took that to extremes. We built the data platform, the data science platform in the data centers where the data already resides. So we've built it inside the data center of TPP, the electronic health record software provider. And we built it inside the data environment of EMIS, another electronic health record software provider. And between them, each of these 2 companies hold 41% and 55% of the health records in the country. So that's how we get 96% coverage of the population. It's also really important and really positive and powerful because it means we've had close collaboration with those EHR vendors, and they have been absolutely fantastic. They have very deep expertise about this data, as you'd expect, because they write the software that collects it. Number 2, we impose flexible standards on data management. Essentially, we've created a set of standard functions in a standard pipeline to do the data management and code execution. Now, when you produce standard functions for data management, 3 really important things follow. Number 1, it means that the code for data management, which as I said is about 80% of the work in any project, is reusable, understandable to everybody who comes to it. The current paradigm is typically, oh, Barbara will do a SQL query, but she's only in at the end of the week. And then Martin has got a thing called something Python. If you run that while it's in the same folder as the CSV, then you can fix the dates in Stata, and then we'll start reshaping the variables in R. By using the open safely data management tools, because everybody's doing data management in the same way, it means everybody can read and understand and therefore critically review and reuse everybody else's code. And it looks like this. It's pretty nicely readable. You write your study definition and it says things like, I want a variable called COPD. It's patients with these clinical events, and tells you where to look for that list of codes. Now, to understand why this is powerful, you need to understand what the electronic health records look like. Essentially, it's one row per clinical event. You've got an NHS number, a name, you get an event code, a date, time, and a location. And the events are things like a prescription for something, or an emergency admission, or a diagnosis. As I said, the names and NHS numbers are replaced with pseudonyms, but that doesn't buy you any privacy. It does, however, buy you a slightly trimmer data set. But what you want to produce as a researcher is something that's very much boiled down from that. You want a two-way table that's one row per patient, and then a load of columns that say, does this patient have a history of asthma? Have they had a prescription for this given treatment in the past few months? What's the average BMI of all the measurements that have been taken, and so on. And so you do that by producing code lists. And if you go to codelists.opensafely.org, you can find all of our code lists, but also our code list authoring system that lets you write SNOMED codes, read codes, CCV3 codes, and so on. And then you use this code in combination with your code list that you've already produced to generate your analysis ready data set. Now, there's something quite important that comes additionally from that standardized approach to data management. And that is that you get privacy for patients, because we also use exactly the same code, exactly the same framework, the same functions to generate a dummy data set. You can see here, you're saying my expectations for COPD, which is basically emphysema, I'm expecting that about 5% of the population are going to have it. That is used by the OpenSafely framework to generate a dummy data set for you. Now that dummy data set is entirely non-disclosive. It's yours to use, it's randomly generated to write all of your data preparation and statistical analysis code, your dashboard code, your graphs and your tables and so on. Now you write all of that in the open with this dummy code, with this dummy data. You write it all on GitHub. We then check that your code is capable of completing to execution against the real data entirely within GitHub using GitHub Actions. And by the way, all code authoring is interactive now with Gitpod online, so you don't have to go through the pain of getting Docker up and running on your local machine. And when your data management code and your data analysis code are capable of running to completion, you press a big button on the jobs server. It gets wrapped up in a container using Docker, and it gets sent through into the live environment where it executes against the real data, and your tables, your graphs, and your log files are dumped in an output folder. But crucially, no researcher ever gets to enter that live environment that contains the real data. They never need to tinker with the live underlying raw data. Now that's really important because it means that all the code can be shared. And from that comes the final innovation really, which is transparency. Because we know that everybody's data management and data analysis code is non-disclosive, we can share it. And because we can share it, we do share it. So if you go to jobs.opensafely.org right now, and I might as well do it myself, you can see, hang on. You probably want me to stop talking in a moment, don't you? You can see my calendar right now. That's irritatingly disclosive. If you go to jobs.opensafely.org right now, you can see everything that's currently executing on 58 million patients worth of data. So you can see here all of the different code that's executing, current live workspaces. And if you click on any of these, you go through to a much more detailed page. It links all the way through to the commit ID. Oh, Christ, remind me later, GitHub. Clicks through to the commit ID of the GitHub repo. So you can see the GitHub repo and indeed the state of the GitHub repo at the point at which it executed against the data. Some of these, if you're not part of our GitHub organization, won't be visible to you because they're for studies which haven't yet finished. All GitHub repos go open at the point at which the results are being openly shared. And to just take it even further, we don't just share our code for the platform and for each analysis. This is also a full-scale analytics platform and it's properly documented. All of this is openly accessible to everyone. Anybody who wants to understand how to drive OpenSafely, you can go here and you can read every single line about every single aspect of every single function, every single working practice, how every single aspect of the platform works. That's all open to the general public. That's all open to other developers to use, reuse, as they please. I'm going to try and stop there, but I can't help myself but just share. Is it okay, Seb? Just 2 minutes more?
Okay, yes, fine.
Just some of the lessons learned very briefly, because our objectives here were more than just to ship a platform. It's also to try and get some culture change. The world of electronic health records research, health data research in the UK, I think has been really left behind by many other areas in science. Structural genomics, structural biology has embraced open working practices, as has physics. You see a team science approach, but you also see a much deeper recognition in those other specialties that data analysis is inherently a software-driven process. We wanted to combine best practice from academia and the software community, so open code, open documentation, functions and libraries instead of copying and pasting, automate wherever possible, but also bringing in new practices like code review and unit testing and so on. And just in terms of lessons learned, it has been a truly extraordinary journey. Number one, just the power of very, very wide collaboration. So this is much bigger than just my group in Oxford. We've built this in a team that includes TPP and DMIS, the electronic health record software suppliers, who have incredibly deep knowledge, with the electronic health records research group at London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, who've got a lot of experience of working with EHR data, but less on the computational data science. My group, the DataLab in Oxford, who are the kind of glue in that we understand both software development and epidemiology research and electronic health records. But then also the team at NHS England and NHSX, who understood the policy landscape, how to get permissions, and were the people where we had to keep upping our game. We had to explain how we were addressing the privacy issues in order to persuade them to sign off on access under the coping notice for this project. So the power of wide collaboration, but also collaboration is not meetings. Collaboration in a technical project is deep technical collaboration on code through GitHub. The second lesson learned, I think, is the ongoing absence of open competitive funding for code, platforms, methodological innovation, and practical data science work in healthcare. I think this is really going to hold us back strategically, nationally, and it's still a problem. Open Safely has only ever been funded, with the exception of one welcome grant that we only got fairly late on, has only ever been funded by us getting money for single analyses. There is still nowhere that you can get resource in an open and competitive way to build data science platforms, even when you've built something so huge and high impact as Open Safely. Number three is that data science vaporware is still a very striking problem in this space. There are a large number of data analysis environments and data science projects around health data research in the UK, which exist more in PowerPoint slides than in reality. And I think that's going to hold us back strategically. But lastly, and most importantly, the key insight, I think, is that COVID is not the only emergency. Everybody suddenly got up and ran and sprinted and was desperate to fix things and to help and to move quickly during COVID. And better use of data was an important way that we could help save lives across the whole landscape. And there have been great projects in NHS England in particular, and also in the ONS national TRE. But there were always lives on the table to be saved through better use of data. And I think we have to make sure that we don't lose the momentum that we've all collectively generated during COVID-19. Anyway, I'll stop ranting there and hopefully you've got questions.
Thank you very much, Ben.
Tell me, has anyone got questions? What will you do? Will you type them? Will you wave frantically at your camera?
Please type them. So there was a question about, do you have plans to expand this to other countries?
Damn right we do. Anywhere that wants us, we will go. So we're already building it in some local data centres for smaller local populations in the NHS. And we've got a few opportunities globally. Our principal focus right now is continuing to work with the NHS on England data, but anywhere that anybody wants to work with us to implement our software layer, which is, I think, the right way to think about it, we're keen to help. And if you're reckless, then just grab it and do it yourself. But it'll work better if you chat with us, because it's not yet, for external implementations, it's not yet at the point of sudo install open safely, but actually we're working towards that. It'll never be a terraforming script, but I think there is a lot that we can do to make it much more straightforward. I'm
going to go ahead and ask one of the techie questions. So how does the platform make sure that the data from two data centers run together? Is any data transfer happening, especially, I guess, the two data providers, EMIS and TPP?
Yeah, so that's a really interesting question. So this is one of the great challenges of recent and future times, I think, for health data research in the UK. There are a lot of people working on some projects that are all, I think, quite secret at the moment. There's very little in public about them, but trying to develop approaches to federated analytics. We're obviously doing that already, and there's a lot of learning from that. First of all, the current approach is that your data preparation code and data analysis code with Open Safely is written in one place, and you kick it off in one place from jobs.opensafely.org. The same data preparation code gets sent out once to Open Safely TPP, once to Open Safely EMIS, and it runs through to completion in those completely different data environments. So it's different data models, different computational environment, and everything else. And part of the manifesto of the project, part of the design architecture, is that once in the background, in the platform, we do all of the engineering necessary to address the differences between those different environments, so that the user, the person writing the data preparation and data analysis code, doesn't have to worry about implementing it into different environments. We don't transfer any detailed disclosive data between those two environments. There is the possibility to, in theory, in technical theory. We don't want to at the moment, and it would raise new information governance problems. So instead, you get the summary results in each environment, and then you stitch those back together, respecting small number suppression and so on. If you've got exposure and outcome variables in different locations, we've got lots of work on how to do that in the minimally disclosive way, and also the most computationally efficient way. You do get additional challenges around overlap. So we weren't certain that we could be confident that there were no duplicate patients between those two environments, TPP and EMIS. There shouldn't be, in theory. But we all know from when you actually start working with data that you hit edge cases, and things which shouldn't happen actually do happen. So we've done one exchange of shared salt hash of pseudonymous NHS identifiers and just the list of NHS IDs to establish how much overlap there was between EMIS and TPP. I was expecting it to be substantial. I was expecting tens or hundreds of thousands, if only due to not run conditions, just asynchrony in generation of patient lists. So we update the data we can do it daily, we do it weekly. I was expecting that asynchronies in when a practice moves from being an EMIS using practice to a TPP using practice, there'd be enough churn that there'd be 100,000 overlaps or something. The actual overlap was absolutely tiny, I mean, stunningly tiny. So in terms of overlap, really very minimal. If you go to the DataLab.org, you can see a bit more detail on in a blog on the history of Open Safely around federated analytics, and we're about to publish some more detailed technical stuff. You should also be able to find some of the code in there. Shall I whiz through some of the questions myself, Seb? Is that good?
I think I mean, if you can potentially answer a couple of them in the chat, we do have to move on to the presentation of the main projects. And I mean, yeah, thank you very much for the talk. And maybe if everybody wants to unmute and give a round of applause, I think it's well deserved.
Come and apply for jobs with us. Get in touch. Send us emails. Cheers.
Okay, so I will now hand over to Daniel Townsend, who is one of the project managers in this year's DSSGx, who will introduce the different projects. And we have to thank him also very much for all the work he's done over the summer. Thank you, Daniel.
Hi, thanks, Sebastian. So I'll just lead into the 4 teams that will be presenting today. Each team will speak for exactly 5 minutes, and we won't have times for question and answers because after we'll move into breakout rooms where you can further engage with the teams. So the teams in the order in which they will run are ITU, DNCP, BMWI, and SME. So now I'll hand over to Tova Perlman, who will do the ITU presentation.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Let me just get my screen up. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, great. All right. Well, thank you all so much for coming. Today, I will be presenting on the mapping the world's offline population. My name is Tova, and I worked with Johnny, Ukujan, Jacob, Robert, and Daniel on this project. Our partners are the International Telecommunications Union, or ITU, along with UNICEF and Project Giga, all agencies in the UN. Today, 2/3 of the world's school-aged children have no internet access at home. The lack of connectivity for children doesn't just limit their ability to connect online, it prevents them from competing in the modern economy, isolating individuals and perpetuating the digital divide. Less than 1 in 20 school-aged children from low-income countries have internet connection at home, compared with nearly 18 in 20 from high-income countries. COVID-19 has exacerbated this disparity, as children relied on the internet for their schooling, and for children who lack internet, that means they've not had proper schooling for the last year and a half. ITU only knows internet statistics on the country level, based on survey data, which is often of inconsistent quality. Our project builds a toolbox for getting connectivity statistics that are more current, granular, and accurate than previously. What used to take months and working with individual countries to collect local survey data can now take a matter of hours with our tool, and it's also cheaper. Our tool outputs a priority list of schools that need internet connection with an emphasis on the amount of people that would benefit from each school. Why schools? Because these often serve as community hubs and places of learning. Our second goal is to use the local area internet statistics to determine national or province level statistics for countries not currently mapped by ITU. For our project, we've gathered and trained a model on Brazil schools and then used this trained model to predict for schools in Thailand and the Philippines. First, we had to determine what might be helpful in indicating if an area around a school has high internet connectivity. We came up with a few open source data sets. One is speed test data, a good indicator for how fast the internet is running in certain areas. Next, cell tower data, helpful in indicating where mobile connectivity is located and if schools are within range of a cell tower. Next, population data, helpful in having accurate population numbers. Next, Facebook user data. This works by showing how many users are within a given radius of any school. Of course, there are issues in places where Facebook usage is not high. And lastly, we have satellite data in 3 different forms. Nighttime lights shows areas with lots of light and presumably high levels of internet. Global human modification is a data set created by engineers. And measuring vegetation is our last data set. The assumption is that areas with higher vegetation are more rural and have less internet connection, while areas with low levels are more urban and have higher connection. Nighttime imagery, global human modification, and Facebook users prove to be the most important features powering our model. And why are these specific predictors so important? These data sets are continuous, meaning they don't stop at a certain spatial scale or boundary. They're globally ubiquitous and standardized. Calling this data for school buffer zones can work for any school in the world, and it doesn't contain the human error that survey data does. We then trained a model that extracts patterns from the data. On average, our predictions are only 5% off base, provided here as the mean absolute error for easy interpretation. We are particularly proud of this 5% because it is attuned to minimize error for schools with lower internet connectivity. We can then confidently deliver a priority list to the partner and be done with our job, but not so fast. Does this also work for other countries? We use the same model to predict school connectivity for Thailand. This map shows every school point in Thailand and its predicted online population, and it seems sensible both as school points and as aggregated provinces, with red being the least connected. However, we cannot quantify how well we did because of the inconsistent quality of the survey data. What we can say is that these are the schools and provinces that need to be prioritized and where internet connection is most needed. We then applied our previous model and also trained a new model using the Philippines data. The average connectivity from the applied Brazil model is 60%, while the retrained model suggests 30% average connectedness. We found that the retrained Philippines model fits more accurately to the Philippines survey data, but the survey was conducted in 2019, and after discussing with our partners, they feel the applied Brazil model is more precise with the current state of the internet in the Philippines. We are thrilled to provide more timely, accurate, and granular data and predictions. Our project is only the beginning, as ITU can take our methodology and continue to apply to new countries. By creating a toolbox, we provide evidence-based policy on schools and communities to connect to the internet. In this way, we all win, as we minimize the digital divide and prepare future generations for success in the 21st century. Thank you.
Thank you, Tova. And following Sebastian's lead, if you could just unmute yourselves and give each presentation a round of applause. Thank you. All right, so our next project is Project DNCP, and the presenter is Beck DeYoung.
Okay, let me share my screen. Is this all showing for everybody?
Yes, Beck. Yes.
Okay, awesome. So as Tova said, thank you everybody for coming. So hi, I'm Beck, and with my team, Kitty, Dushyant, Ethan, Robert, and Daniel, we tackled the problem of cost estimation for public goods and services. We partnered with Paraguay's National Department for Public Contracting, or the DNCP for short. The DNCP performs three main jobs. They're in charge of public purchasing at a national level, which means that they oversee and control spending of other public entities. These include your municipalities, your governmental departments, your universities, etc. Additionally, they maintain a registry of state-approved vendors, and they identify and inspect corruption that occurs throughout this public spending process. For this project, we focused on the DNCP's role in public spending or public procurement. For public purchases, these entities must go through an official process. When a public entity wants to buy goods and/or services, they create a tender detailing the supplies that they want. Then approved vendors will offer these desired supplies along with a reference price of what they believe the supplies are worth. And then if agreed, the entity and the vendor will sign a contract to make it official. Each year, the DNCP spends billions of taxpayer money on goods and services, and adequate prices for these products are often unclear. And this leads to overpaying by the public entities and loss of taxpayer money. Prior to COVID-19, vendors would provide reference prices, but never publish any analysis or reasoning behind how these values were obtained. And this enabled overpricing. Now there is regulation for the vendors to explain how they reach the reference prices. However, the DNCP wants to be ahead of the curve and calculate adequate estimations of prices on their own to reduce public spending and avoid overbilling. Additionally, knowledge of realistic prices will help assist in identifying instances of corruption. So the DNCP has historical data detailing all tenders, offers, and contracts for the past 11 years. This is around 3 million observations. These observations contain everything about a given purchase, from who the buyer is to descriptions of the products in 5 levels of granularity to whether or not the contract is open. And for the products themselves, there are over 60,000 unique goods and services. And these range from cleaning chemicals to paving 50 kilometers of road to printing a piece of paper. And additionally, the prices between the items vary greatly as well. The data has carrots that cost 50 cents and bridges that cost $50 million. And as we discovered very quickly, this variability and large scope make it difficult to accurately predict prices for everything all at once, which is something the DNCP have struggled with as well in the past. So we started to change the scope of the problem. The challenge was no longer to develop a single model for all prices for all products. Rather, it became to develop multiple models specializing in certain subsets of the data, while keeping the models generalizable. So we split the data in multiple ways to serve this task. The biggest split was separating goods and services into separate models. Furthermore, we identified that the high-priced items, such as building an entire bridge, were negatively impacting our ability to predict the lower-priced items. So we separated these out. Similarly, products under $2, such as a single piece of paper or a single carrot, made up more than 25% of the data. And these hindered our ability to predict the mid-range price items. So once again, we separated out these transactions. Each narrowing of focus improved model performance. And in terms of data segmentation, there are still many avenues to pursue that the DNCP will investigate in the future. To support the DNCP in their development of compartmentalized models, we built a dynamic and automated data pipeline specifically for their database. Through an easy-to-use configuration file, our pipeline performs a multitude of tasks. Using consumer price index data and conversion rates, all currencies are standardized and inflation adjusted. Then desired variables are transformed and desired filterings are applied, such as only selecting goods that are low priced. Then the data set is enhanced through the creation of new groupings based on text analysis. Using information about the buyer and items that are frequently bought together, we establish groupings that help identify related products. Then with this data set established, we set up automated hyperparameter and training for any desired algorithm or model type. And finally, the model is used to predict new data and automatically generate evaluation metrics and figures. This framework enables fast and easy model building that is customizable to the DNCP's needs. Using the pipeline, the DNCP will be able to further investigate the refined models that we developed and go further to reach optimal price prediction models that are beneficial for both them and for Paraguay. Due to the dynamic nature of the pipeline, it can also be used for projects beyond cost estimation, such as anomaly detection to identify corruption. Thank you, and please check out our poster for more information.
Thank you, Beck. And another round of applause, please. Thank you. So for our next team is Project BMWI, and this will be, the presenter is Vignesh Ganesh.
Yes. Yeah, I hope the screen is visible. If it isn't, give me a shout. 2020 was a rough year. Related to just 2019, there are unprecedented losses of 114 million jobs globally. Working hour losses in 2020 were approximately 4 times greater than during the global financial crisis in 2009. Undeniably, the pandemic has had an adverse effect on the job market. Germany was no exception to this major problem. In this graph, we can see how the unemployment rate increased in Germany just as the pandemic hit. This has been the focus of attention for our partners, the BMWI. BMWI is the German Federal Ministry of Economic Affairs and Energy. They are responsible for forecasting economic development, and based on these forecasts, they develop and implement economic support programs throughout Germany, which impact millions of lives. BMWI uses a top-down approach for developing regional-level forecasts, as currently there are no wider regional forecasts, maybe except for certain regions in Eastern Germany. In their current approach, they are using region-level forecasts, which are done using data collected at the federal level. This is a huge problem because Germany is a structurally complex country. It is divided into 16 states comprising of 401 counties that are structurally different from each other. Each region has trends of economic development and unemployment rate that are different from the other regions. Since the unemployment rate is a good indicator of its economic health, Being able to forecast the unemployment rate at the county level accurately provides BMWI with a new perspective on the regional situation in Germany. It can help them compare the counties and decide how to allocate the resources to the regions that need the support the most, especially during times of crisis. However, it would be very tedious and expensive for BMWI to forecast it regionally for all the 401 counties. This is where we come in. While BMWI focuses on Germany as a whole, our goal was to break down the economic indicators to the county level. While they primarily focuses on federal level information and forecast, we broke down the forecasting to the county level and predicting the unemployment rates in a bottom-up approach. This graph you see here is the unemployment rate in Berlin. This is Hamburg, Frankfurt, Bonn, and Mannheim. They are not exactly same, but there is something similar about them. We realized that letting similar counties learn from each other yields unemployment rate forecasts that would be better than if you would do it separately for all the 401 counties. This would allow us to use the information from other similar counties as well. To achieve this, we came up with a novel method. First, we divided the counties into 3 clusters based on structural information, such as the number of hospitals and the median income of a county. Then, the model would use the unemployment rate data from counties in one cluster to predict the unemployment rate of other counties in the same cluster. For example, while making predictions for Berlin, the model would use data from Hamburg, but would not use data from Frankfurt, which is a county in another cluster. Using our method, we made forecasts for the unemployment rate of each counties for the next 3 months. We also calculated the 95% confidence interval for these forecasts. Our methods perform better than existing forecast models, even when it was tested on COVID-19 data. We wanted BMWI to use our model and forecast the unemployment rate at the county level for many years to come. So, we built a user-friendly web application with interactive options along with the detailed documentation. This app allows them to easily predict for the next quarter, download the predictions, and also gives them interpretable statistics and graphs. The predictions from our tool help our partners compare the results across regions. It also helps them to differentiate the counties that are at the high risk of unemployment surges to counties that are not. This vital information, which was previously unavailable to our partners, enables them to better spread the limited resources that they have to support the counties that are in need. To sum up, our tool gives the BMWI an easy way to forecast unemployment rate at the county level, which is an important piece of information that wasn't available to them previously, all while using a method that is generalizable to other economic indicators and other users as well. We are Vignesh, Sini, Prakar, and Amit, and our mentors are Doshmun and Yuri. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Vignesh, and a round of applause for Vignesh and the BMWI team, please. Okay, and our last team today is Project SMA, and the speaker for that team is Henri Chance.
Thank you. All right, let me share my screen. Okay, I hope everyone can see this. If not, please do let me know. And if everything is working fine, then let's get started with the final presentation for today. So this project is a collaboration with SMA, which is the Superintendency of the Environment of Chile. SMA is a public service responsible for ensuring that environmental regulations are complied with in order to protect both the environment and public health. As well as monitoring many facilities across the country, SMA also receive complaints about potential environmental infractions directly from citizens and local authorities. Now, SMA receive thousands of complaints every year, and they don't have the resources to respond to all the complaints immediately. So they need to prioritize which complaints to investigate first. the problem has been compounded by the introduction of an online complaint form about 6 months ago. This has been a huge help in making the complaints procedure accessible to more people who aren't always able to travel to the nearest SMA office to make a complaint in person. This means that SMA can get more reliable information that helps them to protect ecosystems and public health. But since then, the volume of complaints has quadrupled, making it even more difficult for SMA to keep up with them. The core problem here is that without a mechanism to rapidly sort through the complaints they receive, complaints about serious damage to the environment can sometimes go unaddressed for long periods of time. So this is why SMA reached out to us. They wanted to see if we could build a system that improves their efficiency at handling the complaints to help SMA respond to environmental disasters as quickly as possible. So let's walk through SMA's current process for dealing with complaints. Firstly, incoming complaints are filtered to determine their relevance to SMA. Some complaints fall within SMA's remit, others need to be redirected to a different institution, and others should be archived. This can happen, for example, if the complaint has no legal basis. For the complaints which are relevant to SMA, an inspection is then carried out, and if this inspection reveals any infractions of environmental regulations, a sanction procedure is initiated against the entity responsible. Otherwise, the complaint is archived. So this is their current process, and now here's what we did. We intervened in SMA's workflow in 2 places. Firstly, we built a model which classifies incoming complaints as either relevant to SMA, requiring redirection to a different institution, or needing to be archived. And secondly, the complaints which are relevant to SMA are then fed into a separate model which predicts how severe the sanction is expected to be for those complaints. And this helps SMA to prioritize inspections for the most serious complaints. To build these models, we use data from SMA's registry of past complaints, which includes a mix of structured data and the free text fields from the complaints themselves, as well as a district-level breakdown of geographical and social data about Chile. So now, the analysts at SMA, who are seeing a high volume of complaints coming in from all over the country, can use our models to quickly identify the most urgent complaints for inspection. SMA estimate that our solution will speed up the redirection of complaints to the appropriate institution by 80%, the archiving of complaints by 85%, and inspections for potentially sanctionable complaints by 65%. This represents a very important increase in the efficiency of their daily operations, so SMA are keen to start using our work as soon as possible. To facilitate this, we are currently in the final stages of deploying both of our models to production directly inside their cloud. This means that our solution will become an integrated part of SMA's process, enabling them to respond to environmental catastrophes much faster. This means a big improvement to the quality of the environment, but it also has an important positive effect on the health of the population. The success of this project has also encouraged SMA to explore more ways of leveraging data science in the future. So beyond our 2 models, our work will also leave a lasting impact on the way that data is used at SMA. Given the positive results of this project, we hope that this can change things not just for SMA, but also for other institutions facing similar issues. Our code will be made publicly available on GitHub, and we hope that this can help deliver similar improvements to organizations across the world. I'm Henri, and working with me on this project were Collins, Ling, Amit, and Doshmond. I hope you enjoyed the presentation, and please do check out our poster. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Henri. At this time, we'll go into breakout rooms, which you can toggle between each room to interact with the fellows a bit more and to see the posters that they have developed on their different projects. I believe you will create the breakout rooms for us now.
Yeah, so let me finish with a few words. First of all, 4 really impressive projects. So kudos to all the fellows, project managers, technical mentors for their enthusiasm, hard work, and dedication. And I mean, it was only a 12-week project, but you have really moved the world. But actually, I would like to let our project partners speak. So some feedback we received was the DSSG experience has been amazing, great, skilled, and highly motivated participants, unbelievably helpful for all sides. It has been a real privilege to work with DSSG, and it has been a wonderful experience for us, and we highly recommend being part of this initiative to other organizations. So that's it for now from me. If you want to stay in touch, you can find us on the internet, warwick.ac.uk/DSSGx, or email us at dssg@wbs.ac.uk. Thank you very much for joining today, and please enjoy the poster session.